Everyone in that chapel thought he'd lost his mind. A billionaire marrying a woman no one wanted? The whispers were cruel, the cameras ruthless. But when the bride lifted her veil, Ethan Carter froze. His jaw clenched, his eyes widened, and for the first time in his life, the man who controlled empires lost control. Because the face staring back at him wasn't just unexpected, it was unforgettable. Ethan Carter wasn't the type of man who believed in fairy tales. He built his fortune from the ground up, surviving betrayal, boardroom wars, and heartbreaks that left him colder than the glass walls of his Manhattan penthouse. At 32, he had everything a man could want: power, money, and a name people whispered with awe and envy. But happiness? That was something he had long stopped chasing. Until the day he received a phone call that changed everything. It came from his grandfather's lawyer. The old man had passed away and left behind a will that shocked everyone, including Ethan. According to it, Ethan could only inherit the family's multi-billion-dollar real estate empire if he married before his next birthday. And not just anyone. The will specified the bride must come from the Holloway lineage, an old family connected to the Carters for generations. The problem? That family had long fallen from grace. The only living member left was Clara Holloway, a quiet, reclusive woman who lived on the outskirts of town, rumored to be damaged and unfit for society. The tabloids called her the forgotten girl. No one had seen her in years. People said she was scarred, physically and emotionally, from an accident that took her parents' lives. Ethan didn't believe in gossip, but when his board members started circling like vultures, ready to snatch his empire, he had no choice. He needed a bride, and fast. He ordered his driver to take him to Holloway Estate, a crumbling mansion covered in vines and silence. The place looked like time had forgotten it. And maybe that's what drew him there. When the heavy wooden door creaked open, Ethan expected to see someone broken. But instead, a soft, steady voice said, "You're late, Mr. Carter." Clara stood there, her face hidden behind a thin lace scarf, her hands steady but cold. She wasn't what he expected. She wasn't weak. She was composed, almost too calm, like a storm waiting to break. "I know why you're here," she said. "You need a bride. And I need my family estate saved from the bank. So let's not pretend this is about love." Ethan almost smiled. She was direct, refreshing, even. "You'll marry a man you don't know for money?" he asked. Clara looked up, her eyes piercing through the thin veil. "You'd marry a stranger for power. So tell me, Mr. Carter, what's the difference?" That one line hit him harder than he cared to admit. Within a week, their wedding was arranged. No flowers, no guests from her side, and only business partners and media vultures from his. It was the wedding of the year, but not for romance. It was a transaction, and everyone knew it. When Clara walked down the aisle, whispers filled the air. "Why her? She's hiding something. She's not even beautiful." Ethan ignored them. He stood tall, adjusting his cufflinks, his face unreadable. But inside, his heart raced. For reasons he didn't understand, every step she took closer made the air thicker, the silence louder. And then, at the altar, the priest said, "You may lift the veil." He hesitated for just a second before reaching out. His hand trembled, a rare thing for Ethan Carter. He lifted the veil slowly. The entire room gasped. Cameras clicked. The whispers turned into stunned silence. Clara's face wasn't what anyone expected. There was a faint scar running from her left temple down to her cheek, a reminder of the fire that had taken her family. But it wasn't the scar that made him freeze. It was her eyes. He knew those eyes. He'd seen them once before, years ago, on a rainy night outside a car crash scene, where a young girl had cried beside a burning vehicle. He'd been there. He'd saved her. And now she stood before him, his bride. For the first time in years, Ethan couldn't breathe. His past, his guilt, his cold exterior, all shattered in an instant. The priest cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, do you take this woman?" Ethan didn't answer right away. His mind was spinning. Clara was the girl he'd never forgotten, the one he'd saved, then abandoned, believing she hadn't survived. But she was here, alive, standing in front of him. He forced a breath. "I do." Clara's lips trembled slightly before she whispered, "I do." The audience clapped, cameras flashed, and the deal was sealed. But behind the polite smiles and fake congratulations, something powerful had shifted between them. That night, as they drove away from the chapel, the silence between them was deafening. The city lights blurred past, and Ethan finally spoke. "You knew who I was all along, didn't you?" Clara turned her face toward the window. "Yes," she said softly. "But I wanted to see if you remembered me." He swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything?" she whispered. He didn't answer. Because deep down, he knew it would have changed everything. And as the car disappeared into the night, neither of them knew that their marriage of convenience was about to uncover secrets darker and more dangerous than either of them imagined. The rain began to fall as the black limousine rolled through the empty streets. Clara sat by the window, her reflection fractured by raindrops, her mind far away from the man sitting beside her. Ethan Carter, the billionaire who didn't believe in love, now her husband by contract. To the world, they were newlyweds. But between them was only silence and unfinished history. Ethan loosened his tie and watched her from the corner of his eye. She hadn't changed much, still graceful, still distant, still carrying that quiet sadness that drew him in all those years ago. The night of the accident flashed in his memory, the smell of smoke, the screams, the way he had carried a trembling young girl away from the burning car. He'd held her hand until the ambulance came. Then, she disappeared from his life like a ghost. He'd searched for her once, but the Holloway family name was buried under scandal. When he finally tried to move on, he built walls so high that even memories couldn't climb them. And now she was here, his wife, sitting inches away, as if fate had decided to mock him. When they reached his mansion, Ethan led her inside. The place was enormous, glass walls, marble floors, art worth millions. But Clara's eyes didn't widen. She'd grown up in luxury once, before tragedy took it all away. To her, money meant nothing anymore. Ethan called for the staff to prepare the guest suite, but Clara's calm voice stopped him. "I'll take the east wing," she said. "I prefer privacy." He raised an eyebrow. "You're my wife. You don't have to act like a tenant." She gave him a faint smile. "We both know this marriage isn't about love, Mr. Carter. Let's not make it more complicated than it already is." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The sound of thunder echoed outside, and he found himself walking toward the east wing, drawn by something he couldn't name. He saw her sitting by the fireplace, wearing a simple white robe, reading a book. The flicker of the flames cast soft shadows on her face, highlighting the scar she tried to hide. "Can't sleep either?" she asked without looking up. He leaned against the doorframe. "I don't sleep much. Comes with the territory of running a billion-dollar company." She closed her book. "Or maybe it comes with guilt." He stiffened. "Guilt?" She met his eyes. "You saved me once. Then you forgot me." Her words cut deep. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I didn't forget you, Clara. I thought you were gone. I tried to find you." Her gaze softened for a moment, but then hardened again. "You stopped looking." The air between them thickened with everything they didn't say. Ethan turned away, his hands clenched. "Maybe I stopped because it hurt too much to remember." Clara stood, her voice trembling slightly. "You don't get to say that, Ethan. You had everything. I lost everything." The fire crackled between them, throwing sparks into the silence. Ethan didn't reply. Instead, he left the room, his heart pounding with emotions he hadn't felt in years: shame, regret, something dangerously close to longing. Days turned into weeks. Their arrangement was supposed to be simple: stay married for 1 year to secure his inheritance, then quietly part ways. But nothing about Clara Holloway was simple. She was reserved, but sharp, gentle, yet unbreakable. The staff adored her, the media was obsessed with her, and Ethan, he was slowly losing control. He'd catch himself watching her at breakfast, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, her hair slightly messy, her eyes lost in thought. Once, he found her in the garden, planting roses in the cold soil. When he asked why, she said, "Because beauty should exist even in places it doesn't belong." That line haunted him for days. The tabloids soon started spinning stories. Carter's marriage a PR stunt. Who was the mysterious Holloway bride? Reporters camped outside the mansion. Clara handled it with grace, smiling politely, never losing her calm. But Ethan could see the exhaustion in her eyes. One evening, after a particularly vicious headline, Ethan stormed into his office, slamming his phone on the desk. "They won't leave us alone," he muttered. Clara appeared in the doorway. "That's the price of fame. You knew that better than I did." He looked at her, his frustration softening. "You don't deserve this." She walked closer, her voice low. Neither do you. But here we are. For the first time, Ethan smiled. Not the fake, polished one he used for cameras, but something real. You're tougher than I thought. Clara tilted her head. I had to be. Their eyes met, and for a brief second, it felt like the world outside didn't exist. No business deals, no inheritance, no cameras. Just two broken souls finding a strange comfort in each other's silence. That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. He walked to the balcony, where the city lights stretched endlessly below. He'd always thought success meant control, but now he realized how wrong he'd been. The more he tried to understand Clara, the more control he lost. The next morning, he found her in the library, flipping through old photo albums from her childhood. One picture made him pause. It was of her parents, smiling in front of the Holloway estate before the fire. You miss them, he said quietly. She nodded. Every day, but I learned something after they died. What's that? That sometimes life burns down everything you love, just to show you what you're really made of. He looked at her, admiration flickering in his eyes. You're stronger than most people I know. She smiled faintly. And you're lonelier than most people I've met. The truth in her words hit him harder than any deal ever had. For the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't have a reply. But just when it seemed they were finally learning to trust each other, a shadow from the past returned. A man named Victor Hale, Ethan's ruthless business rival, appeared in the news, claiming to have information that could destroy the Carter Empire. And worse, he hinted that Clara Holloway wasn't who she claimed to be. As the media frenzy grew, Ethan stared at the screen, disbelief written on his face. Clara, standing behind him, went pale. She whispered, "He knows." Ethan turned to her sharply. "Knows what, Clara?" She hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Ethan's heart pounded. Clara stood before him, her hands shaking, her face pale as the flickering light from the TV cast shadows across her features. "Clara," he said, his voice low and tense. "What do you mean he knows? What are you hiding from me?" She looked away, clutching the edge of the desk as if it could anchor her. "I didn't tell you everything about that night," she whispered. "The night of the fire." Ethan took a slow step forward. "Go on." Her voice trembled. "You think it was an accident, but it wasn't. My family didn't die because of bad wiring or a storm. The fire was started. Someone wanted the Holloways gone." He froze, confusion flashing across his face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying my father discovered something he wasn't supposed to. Documents, transactions, proof that Victor Hale was laundering money through one of your companies." Ethan blinked, disbelief settling in. "That's impossible. I know you didn't," she said quickly. "But your company was used as a front. My father confronted Hale, and the next day our house went up in flames." The silence that followed was suffocating. The sound of rain outside seemed louder, heavier. Ethan's jaw tightened as he processed her words. "You think Hale killed your family?" Clara nodded slowly. "I don't think it. I know it." Ethan stared at her, his mind spinning. He had spent years fighting off corporate sharks. But this was different. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he demanded. "Because I didn't know if I could trust you," she said softly. "You're his rival, Ethan. For all I knew, you were part of it too." Her words cut deep. "And now?" he asked, his voice quieter, rougher. "Now," she said, meeting his eyes, "I know you're not." Something shifted in that moment, an invisible wall between them cracking just enough for truth to seep through. Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady. "If Hale did this, I'll make him pay." Clara shook her head, her voice almost pleading. "You can't. He's dangerous. He has people everywhere. That's why I agreed to marry you. Not just because of your grandfather's will. I thought, maybe if I was with you, he wouldn't come after me." Ethan exhaled, realization dawning. "So you married me to stay safe?" "Yes," she whispered. "And because I thought I could protect what was left of my family's name. But it wasn't supposed to turn into this." He looked at her, really looked at her. The fear in her eyes, the pain she'd carried for years, and something inside him broke. "Clara, I don't care why you married me. But if you think I'm going to stand by while that man threatens you, you don't know me at all." The next day, Ethan's entire world shifted gears. He called his lawyers, his investigators, his security team. The media had already caught wind of Hale's accusations, and reporters were buzzing around the mansion like wasps. But behind the scenes, Ethan was quietly digging, uncovering old contracts, tracing shell companies, following the trail Clara's father had died for. Clara tried to warn him. "You don't understand what you're up against," she said one evening, as he sat surrounded by files. "Victor isn't just rich. He's ruthless. He doesn't fight fair." Ethan glanced up from his papers. "Neither do I." For the first time, she almost smiled. It was faint, fleeting, but it was there, and Ethan realized how much he wanted to see it again. Days passed. They began working together in secret, connecting the dots, piecing together the truth. Long nights in the study turned into quiet dinners. The air between them softened. Ethan would find himself stealing glances at her when she laughed. Really laughed, not the polite smiles she gave the world. But danger was closing in faster than they expected. One morning, Clara received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, her and Ethan, taken from outside the mansion gates. On the back, a message in bold red ink. "You should have stayed hidden." Her hands trembled as she handed it to Ethan. His eyes darkened. "He's watching us." Clara's voice cracked. "He knows where we are." Ethan called his head of security immediately, locking down the estate. "From now on, no one comes in or out without my permission," he ordered. "I don't care who they are." But that night, despite all the guards, the alarms, and the walls, someone managed to get in. It was past midnight when Clara woke to a faint creaking sound. The wind whispered through the open window. Only, she was sure she'd locked it. Her heart raced as she slipped out of bed, grabbing the lamp from her nightstand. "Hello," she called softly. No answer. Then she saw a shadow move across the hallway. Before she could scream, a hand grabbed her arm. She spun around, swinging the lamp with all her strength. The glass shattered against the figure's shoulder, and the man stumbled back. That's when Ethan appeared, gun drawn, his face cold and focused. "Get away from her," he shouted. The intruder bolted toward the balcony, but Ethan was faster. He tackled the man to the ground, the sound of the struggle echoing through the house until guards rushed in. When they pulled the mask off the man's face, Clara gasped. It was one of Victor Hale's former bodyguards, someone she'd seen years ago at her father's company parties. Ethan turned to her, his expression hard. "He's sending warnings. He wants to scare us into silence." Clara's voice trembled. "Then he's going to find out I don't scare easily." The next morning, news broke of the break-in. Hale went on television, pretending innocence, saying Ethan was framing him. The world believed him, at least for a while. But Ethan didn't care about public opinion anymore. He was done playing defense. He turned to Clara in the study that evening. "If he started this fire, I'll finish it. We're going to expose him, no matter what it takes." Clara met his eyes, determination glinting behind the fear. "Then we do it together." For the first time since their wedding, Ethan smiled, genuinely, fiercely. Together. And as he reached out, their fingers brushed, not a contract anymore, not a deal, but something real, fragile, and dangerous. Neither of them said it out loud, but they both knew. They weren't just fighting for revenge anymore. They were fighting for each other. The days that followed felt like living on the edge of a storm. The mansion was under constant watch, security cameras, guards, reporters outside the gates. But the real danger wasn't what they could see. It was what they couldn't. Ethan barely slept. He spent hours in his study, tracing financial records, phone logs, anything that could connect Victor Hale to the Holloway fire. Clara, meanwhile, began receiving strange calls at night. Each time she picked up, the line was silent. Only the faint sound of breathing. The first few times, she hung up, telling herself it was her imagination. But deep down, she knew. It was him. Hale was playing his game again, one she'd already lost once. One evening, Ethan found her standing alone by the grand staircase, staring out the window at the flashing lights of the reporters beyond the gates. "You should rest," he said gently, walking up behind her. She didn't turn. "Every time I close my eyes, I see the fire again," she whispered. "The smoke. My father calling my name. I survived that night, Ethan. But sometimes I wonder if I really did." He hesitated, then reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did. And I swear, Clara, I won't let him hurt you again." She turned then, looking at him with tired eyes. "You can't promise that." "Watch me," he said. It was the first time in years she felt safe enough to lean on someone. The man who once lived for power now looked at her like she was the only thing worth fighting for. That night, while she finally drifted to sleep, Ethan made a call to an old friend, an ex-FBI agent named Ryan Cole. I need everything on Victor Hale, Ethan said. Every offshore account, every name he's paid off. I want his empire burned to the ground. Ryan hesitated. You realize you're declaring war on one of the most connected men in the country? Ethan's tone was cold. Then he picked the wrong man to play with. Within days, Ryan's team uncovered a hidden trail, a network of dummy corporations all linked to Hale. But one file caught Ethan's eye, a payment record from the week of the Holloway fire. It was made to a man named Joseph Crane, the same bodyguard who'd broken into their mansion. The payment memo simply read, "Job complete." Ethan's blood ran cold. He printed the document, slid it across the table to Clara, and said quietly, "This is your proof." Clara's hands shook as she read it. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from a dark, fierce relief. "We can end this," she whispered. "We can finally make him pay." But victory came at a price. The very next morning, Ethan's company was hit with a federal investigation. Hale had leaked fake documents suggesting Ethan had committed tax fraud. The stock market reacted instantly. Carter Holdings plummeted. Reporters swarmed every corner. Investors demanded answers, and Ethan's empire began to crumble. Clara found him pacing the office, his phone lighting up with angry calls. "He's trying to destroy you," she said. "He's not trying," Ethan muttered, his voice low and bitter. "He's succeeding." "Then fight back," she urged. "Use what we found." He looked at her, frustration burning in his eyes. "You think the world's going to believe me over him? He's already spun the story. I'm the corrupt billionaire, and you're the scheming wife who married for money." She stepped closer, fire in her voice. "Then we stop hiding. We tell them the truth." Ethan studied her face. The same woman the world once pitted, now standing strong beside him, unshakable. "You're really not afraid of him anymore, are you?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "I was once. Not now. Not with you." Those words hit him deeper than any business loss could. For the first time in years, Ethan Carter, who'd mastered every deal, every market, felt something he couldn't quantify. Something real. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then we do this together." "Together," she whispered back. The next day, they walked into a press conference side by side. Cameras flashed like lightning. Ethan stood tall, his arm around Clara as she faced the microphones. The crowd hushed. "I'm not here to defend myself," Ethan began. "I'm here to defend the truth. The man behind these lies, Victor Hale, has been laundering money through fake charities for years. And 10 years ago, when someone tried to expose him, he burned their house down." The crowd gasped. Clara stepped forward, her voice calm but steady. "That someone was my father. My family died because of him. And now he's trying to destroy the only person who ever protected me." The silence was deafening. Then the questions erupted, cameras whirring, reporters shouting. But it didn't matter. The truth was finally out. That night, they sat together in the quiet of the garden, surrounded by the roses Clara had planted weeks ago. She looked up at him. Exhaustion and hope mingled in her eyes. "Do you think it'll work?" she asked. Ethan gazed at her, his voice soft. "The truth always finds a way." But deep down, he knew Hale wasn't finished. Men like him never went down without a fight. Just as the thought crossed his mind, his phone buzzed. It was Ryan. His voice was tense. "Ethan, you need to get Clara out of there. Now." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "Hale's desperate. He knows you exposed him. My guys intercepted chatter. He's sending someone after her tonight." Ethan's blood turned to ice. He grabbed his jacket, turning to Clara. "We have to go? Now." "What's happening?" she asked, panic rising. He didn't answer. He just took her hand and ran toward the car waiting outside. The mansion lights blurred behind them as tires screeched against wet pavement. "Where are we going?" she cried. "Somewhere safe," he said, gripping the wheel. "I'm not losing you again." But in the rearview mirror, a pair of headlights appeared, following, fast. Clara turned, fear flashing across her face. "Ethan, they're behind us." "I see them." His jaw clenched, adrenaline surging. "Hold on." He swerved down a narrow road, the city lights fading into the dark countryside. Rain poured harder, blurring everything but the sound of her voice calling his name. Then, just as they rounded a sharp bend, another car blocked the road ahead. Ethan slammed the brakes, the tires screaming as the world spun into chaos. The car skidded across the wet asphalt, spinning until it came to a violent stop near the edge of a cliff. The headlights flickered, and the rain poured down in sheets, blurring everything into chaos. Clara's scream cut through the darkness as Ethan gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady his breath. The other car's doors opened, and dark figures stepped out. 3 men, all dressed in black, moving with purpose. Ethan's instincts kicked in. "Stay down," he said, pushing Clara lower into her seat. He reached for the glove compartment, pulled out his licensed pistol, and checked the chamber. "They're here for you." Clara's voice trembled. "Ethan, please." But before she could finish, one of the men fired a warning shot into the air. The echo bounced through the valley. Ethan ducked, then opened his door slightly, peering through the rain. He could make out the silhouette of a man standing behind the attackers, Victor Hale. Even through the downpour, Hale's smirk was visible, cruel and mocking. "Come out, Carter," Hale shouted. "You should have known better than to cross me. You think the world's going to believe your lies? You're finished." Ethan stepped out of the car, rain soaking his suit, but his eyes burned with rage. "You burned her family alive, Hale. You tried to destroy mine. It's over." Hale laughed, the sound cold and sharp. "You still think truth wins, don't you? That's the problem with men like you. You believe in justice. I believe in power." Clara opened her door, ignoring Ethan's warning shout. She stood beside him, trembling but defiant. "You don't have power anymore, Victor. The world knows who you are. Every file, every payment, it's out there. You can't bury the truth this time." Hill's expression darkened. "Then I'll bury you instead." He raised his gun. Time slowed. Rain splashed against their faces. Ethan moved instinctively, stepping in front of Clara. The gunshot exploded through the night. Clara screamed. The world blurred. Ethan stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder, blood mixing with the rain. "Ethan!" she cried, catching him as he fell to his knees. But before Hale could fire again, headlights blazed across the road. Black SUVs screeched to a halt. Ryan Cole and his federal team, weapons drawn. "Drop your weapon, Hale," Ryan shouted. Hale turned, startled, but it was too late. Agents surrounded him, pulling him to the ground as he yelled and cursed, his empire finally crumbling in real time. Clara held Ethan's face in her hands, her tears mixing with the rain. "You're going to be okay. Do you hear me? You're not leaving me, Ethan." He managed a faint smile. You remembered my name that night." She nodded, sobbing. "I never forgot you." Sirens wailed in the distance as ambulances arrived. Ryan knelt beside them, his voice steady. "He'll make it. You got him, Clara. You both did." As paramedics lifted Ethan onto the stretcher, he grabbed Clara's hand, refusing to let go. Don't leave me," he whispered. She squeezed his fingers, her voice firm. "Never again." Weeks passed before Ethan opened his eyes in the hospital room. The sterile white walls, the soft hum of machines, the scent of antiseptic, it all blurred together. But when his vision cleared, the first thing he saw was Clara sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. "You're awake," she said softly, relief flooding her face. He smiled weakly. "Guess I owe you another wedding. The first one was complicated." She laughed through her tears. "You're impossible." He studied her face, the scar, the strength, the beauty that went far beyond appearance. "You know," he said, "the day I lifted that veil, I thought I was seeing a stranger. But it was you, the girl I could never forget." Her eyes shimmered. "Maybe fate just took the long way to bring us back together." He reached for her hand, his voice rough but full of warmth. "You're not the bride no one wanted, Clara. You're the only one I ever did." She blinked, her heart swelling. "And you're not the man the world thinks you are, Ethan Carter. You're better." Time passed, and the storm that had nearly destroyed them began to fade. Hale was sentenced to life in prison after the FBI uncovered years of fraud, arson, and extortion. Clara testified with calm courage, her words helping to close a chapter that had haunted her for a decade. Ethan recovered slowly, but with her beside him, he found strength in places he never thought he had. The media, once cruel and skeptical, now called their story the love that survived the fire. Months later, on a quiet afternoon, Ethan led Clara to the garden of the Holloway estate, the same one he'd helped her rebuild from ruins. Roses bloomed everywhere, crimson and soft under the sun. He stopped beneath the largest oak tree, turned to her, and said, You know, I never got to give you a real proposal. Clara smiled. You don't have to. He shook his head. I want to. Then he went down on one knee. No audience, no cameras, no contracts, just them. Clara Holloway, will you marry me? For real this time. No deals, no conditions. Just love. Tears filled her eyes. She nodded. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and when she leaned down to kiss him, the world finally felt right again. Their wedding was small and quiet, held at sunset, surrounded by the people who truly mattered. As she walked down the aisle, Ethan didn't hear the whispers or the cameras, because this time, there were none. There was only her. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Ethan smiled and whispered, "I've waited for this moment my whole life." Clara smiled back. Then don't waste another second. He kissed her softly, the kind of kiss that says we made it through the fire and found home on the other side. The guests cheered, but Ethan barely heard them. For the first time, his heart was quiet. No noise, no fear, just peace. Later that night, as they danced under the stars, Clara whispered, "You saved me twice, you know." He smiled. "No, Clara, you saved me." And under that endless sky, surrounded by the scent of roses and the echoes of their laughter, the billionaire who once believed love was a weakness finally understood. Sometimes, the greatest wealth isn't in what you own, but in who stands beside you when the world burns. And that was the story of the billionaire who married the bride no one wanted. A tale of pain, redemption, and love that proved sometimes the most broken souls build the strongest bonds. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story that will move you, shock you, and maybe even heal you a little. Tell me in the comments, what part hit you the hardest? Until next time, this is your storyteller signing off. Stay kind, stay hopeful, and remember, love always finds a way.